You're listening to the Dueling Pistols podcast, where we read and discuss the stories of our past and explore some of the most wild adventures from modern history.
No, bro. George Washington said, stay strapped or get clapped, and I'm all about that. I ain't,
Floyd had split his surveying party into 3 groups.
Bro, you never split up. Never split up. You seen Scooby-Doo? Nothing good happens when the group splits.
As they tried to drag the canoe to the shore, Fanny Calloway beat him over the head with the paddle until it broke.
Good job, Fanny.
When the man in front goes down, pick up his rifle and shoot.
I hate this guy.
Yeah?
I hate this guy. I want him dead. I want him to die, and die a somewhat miserable death.
We ain't like the British.
We dissed everything, including the accent.
One of the Shawnees killed that day was the son of the man who would become Boone's captor and adoptive father.
Wow. Bro, this is like a freaking soap opera. That is ridiculous. Does he have an evil twin that's going to pop out sometime too?
Triggered by Black Flag.
All right, welcome back. I am your host, Brian Call. I'm joined by my brother, Brent Call. How are you, Brent?
Well, thank you.
All right, last episode we talked a little bit about Daniel Boone running from the French and the Indians as they murdered.
Tactical retreat.
As they battled and killed the English soldiers and some of the settlers, the militiamen who, with George Washington and others. George Washington escaped. Daniel Boone escaped with their lives. But what happened was some of the English were moving in to rout out the French, but the French and their Indian allies kicked the British's butts. Probably because the general in charge, General Braddock of the British Empire, completely looked down upon the native people and the settlers in the area and didn't really listen to anybody and said, we're going to kick everybody's butt without even trying. And then they got ambushed and their butts kicked. That sum it up?
Yeah, and I love that. There's just something about somebody like, I got this, and then just slipping on the ice.
Yeah, I agree. They deserved it. So it says on here, going back to the book, so he leaves, Boone leaves, and it's like, oh, well, we're not fighting the French anymore. You know, everybody kind of goes back to, I guess we're going to let them stay. But it says in the book, in the mountains of Pennsylvania, Boone was crossing a bridge over the Waniata River. This is after he left, and he's heading back from, because he had volunteered to be a teamster and a blacksmith with the army, right?
Yeah.
And then he fled in that battle. So now he's like, well, I guess I'm going to go home now. And so while he was crossing a bridge over the Waniata River, he confronted an Indian who drew a knife on him, bragging that he had killed many a long knife, what the Indians of the Ohio Valley called the Virginians, because of their hunting knives and sabers. The brave said he would take one more scalp. Many years later, Boone told the sons of Henry Miller that he had killed only 3 Indians in a long life in the wilderness. The first was this man on the Waniata. Facing the drunken Indian, who flourished the knife over his head, Boone decided he would not back away. Waiting for his chance, he lowered his head and drove his shoulder into the Indian's gut, knocking him off his feet and off the bridge. The Indian fell on the rocks below. But Boone must not have been certain the Indian was killed, for he later told his son Nathan that the only Indian he was sure he ever killed was at the Battle of the Blue Licks.
So for all he knows, he knocked that dude off the bridge and he survived.
Yeah, he broke his back. I don't know. It depends was it 10 feet high or was it 50 feet high?
It's a bridge, bro. Like have you seen any bridge you were willing to fall off of?
The confrontation on the bridge was the kind of incident Boone was almost always able to evade. On the disastrous Braddock expedition, Boone had heard about the gap called the Cumberland, which led to the hunting ground of Kentucky. And by the campfire on the way to Fort Duquesne, Boone had heard John Finley tell of the New Eden of cane and clover, buffalo and beaver, the island in the wilderness where only a few Indians hunted and fewer seemed to live. That's the sort of thing that Lampers and I would hear about and then have to go.
The New Eden, Brian.
Yeah,
clover and buffalo.
You got buffalo over there, dude.
Yeah.
So Finley described a world that contained beaver so numerous a man could take all the pelts he could carry. Best of all was the news that so few Indians lived in this ideal hunting ground. Shawnees, Mingos, and Delawares hunted there, but there seemed to be only the villages of Lower Shawnee Town and perhaps, I ain't going to say that word, Eskipakatakatiki, south of the Ohio. That's a tough one, bro. Can you say it? That looks like a made-up word to me.
It's probably like Craig or something ridiculous.
South of Ohio, north of the... Anyway, it says, some scholars have thought the Indians considered Kentucky taboo for permanent settlements, a sacred hunting ground where none should settle. More think the powerful Iroquois had maintained the Meadowland as their buffalo hunting grounds, driving away all other tribes. The bounty was there for the taking for anyone with the courage and enterprise to go there. You'll find that a lot of land was uninhabited. Like there's evidence that there were Indians there at one point, but they were gone at that point. The native people traveled. You know, they would go where the hunting was good. They'd be here, and then they go here, or they would travel to a hunting ground, but they'd live somewhere else, not to disturb the hunting area. It just so happens that this kind of area that Boone is dreaming about seems to be vacant, mostly vacant, with a few forays of Indians here and there. So you got an area that's not really inhabited by Indians, but is like the Garden of Eden when it comes to hunting. It's just rich. That sounds too good to be true. It's like El Dorado. Since the time of the Vikings, perhaps since the day of the Romans, westering had been in the blood of Europeans. Exploration. The Romans pushed as far toward the sunset as Britain and Ireland, and Irish monks and Eric the Red had sailed all the way to Iceland. Leif Erikson had reached Greenland and the New World. Columbus and his successors had discovered lands and peoples that changed European ways of thinking about the globe and the future. Driven by greed or piety, lust for power or curiosity, romance, or some combination of all five, Europeans were relentless in exploration, going farther and farther with the sun, the stars, and the moon always to the west. Anybody who would carve out a boat, jump on the ocean, and sail who knows where, man, I mean, they got balls. They got the fiddlefoot, the itchy feet. You know, they just want to see what's around the corner. Find that dragon.
And it just never ends, though.
For the colonists in North America, the West meant free land and independence from feudal rule, and this is a new quit rents.
Quit rents?
Yeah, all one word. Quit rents. From debt and debtor's prison, from censures of the church and the class system, from servitude and poverty. The West was the place to rise, to become better, larger. You find that word?
Mm-hmm.
What's it mean?
Fixed rent payable to a landlord for some sort of service. It's basically, you don't pay them money. You can live on my land. You can be a blacksmith. You make X amount of whatever for me. You can live there for 6 months. That's kind of how the deal works.
The book says, for someone like Boone, the West was a place of mystery and shadow also, a stage on which to act a larger, more dramatic role, to play parts written on a different scale in meadows and forests, along rivers and cane brakes, with buffalo far as the eye could reach, with flocks of passenger pigeons that filled the sky for days. From the time he returned from Braddock's campaign, Boone began to think more and more about the land beyond the mountains, and began to reach farther westward with each hunt, into the hills and mountains near the head of the Yadkin. Cool. We're going to get here next. This next little bit is about the beautiful Rebecca.
The beautiful Rebecca.
The beautiful, buxom.
Nice. Good to know.
Rebecca. So that's Boone's wife. Okay. We're going to get a little bit into that, and this is going to be interesting. Moving on, it says, after he returned to the Yadkin, Boone initiated another important change in his life. 2 years before, he had met 15-year-old Rebecca Bryan at a family wedding. Rebecca was the daughter of Joseph and Ailey Bryan, immigrants to Pennsylvania and then Virginia, where Rebecca was born in January 9, 1739. And then it says, like the Boones, the Bryans were a large family. In the court records of Rowan County, Morgan Bryan's name appears often as jury member or magistrate, so her dad was like kind of a mover and a shaker in that town. Daniel had hunted and associated with 3 of Rebecca's brothers. So he met 15-year-old Rebecca a couple years prior to this, and now he's back in town. The meeting of Rebecca Bryan and Daniel Boone, so she'd be 17, is the beginning of one of the great romantic tales of the frontier in 18th century America. Celebrated in film and television, folklore, and history, Rebecca has been portrayed as the ideal wife, patient, resourceful, a great beauty, a crack shot with a rifle, moving again and again with Daniel and their family from North Carolina to Virginia, back to North Carolina, to Tennessee, to Kentucky, to Virginia again, and back to Kentucky, then finally to Missouri. The woman could do it all.
That's a lot. And they're doing it either on foot or at best with a horse involved.
It says, according to Annette Kolodny, in her landmark study of women on the frontier, The Land Before Her, Timothy Flint first portrayed Rebecca with the same heroic nature he attributed to Boone, but then toned down his portrait to suit Victorian tastes. This is interesting. Others would suggest that Rebecca loved the wilderness as much as Daniel did, and rumor would ascribe to her the training of her sons in marksmanship with Daniel while Daniel was away. Annette adds, it is said by some that she was a fair shot, by others that she rivaled her husband in marksmanship. And the rumor persisted that she, not her husband, often away from home, had taught their sons the use of the gun. Rebecca was rumored to have shot 6 deer in one day.
Jeez, good for her.
Daniel was already the champion hunter, trapper, marksman, and wrestler of the Yadkin region. I like how they throw wrestler in there. A descendant later referred to Rebecca as one of the handsomest persons she ever saw. She was also described as mild, pleasant, and kind. Rebecca had fair skin and coal-black hair and striking black eyes. She was a good bit taller than average, about Daniel's height. She was called buxom and larger than the average woman of the time. Though no portrait of her has ever been found, we have a vivid sense of her beauty and vitality. What's buxom, Brent?
She's a thin or slender gal and is quite top-heavy.
Is that what that means? Oh, okay. It says that she was a woman capable of the hard work and childbearing and dangers and excitement of the American frontier. She sounds beautiful.
The Oxford Dictionary says, a woman, plump, especially with large breasts.
All right, there you go. Rebecca's nephew, Daniel Bryan, later remarked on her pleasant manner and speech. A granddaughter would recall that Rebecca was one of the neatest and best of housekeepers, proverbial for the tidiness and Quaker-like simplicity and propriety of all her domestic arrangements.
Quaker simplicity.
When
Just
Boone,
like oats.
When Boone first saw Rebecca, he was 19 and she was only 15. And he always called her my little girl. The folklore of the Yadkin region spawned many tales of the meeting and courtship of Rebecca and Daniel. One of the most popular, first recorded by Timothy Flint, described Boone out fire hunting with a friend. Fire hunters carried a blazing torch into the woods at night, and startled deer would stand frozen staring at the flame.
What do they call them? Fire?
They call it fire hunting. Yeah,
I think
fire
we call
hunters.
that spotlighting. No, officer, I was
Staring
fire hunting
at the flame. You know, it's true though. For one thing, you can see the glow of their eyes in the dark, but also it just blinds them. You know, a lot of people go, "Why do deer freeze when the light shine in their face?" They freeze because they can't see, not because they're necessarily frozen with fear. They're just blind.
That night, you think about that, your night blindness gone in a second.
I don't know that they know that they're being seen.
No, they don't connect that light with a living thing.
It says right here that the glow of the eyes made a perfect target. According to Flint, young Rebecca Bryan is out looking for a stray cow and gets lost in the woods as night falls. She sees a light and walks toward it. Boone aims at the shining eyes, but holds his fire, as if warned by instinct. Rebecca sees what is happening finally and runs away. Boone follows her to the Bryan cabin and falls in love. he knows also that he will give up fire hunting. One of Rebecca's nieces later pointed out that the story could not be true because human eyes do not reflect the way animal eyes do.
Yeah, do you know why? I actually know this.
Tell me why.
So animals have an incandescent layer, in like a dog, like your cat or your dog. If you pop out an eyeball, it's basically a little hollow piece of calcium that your eyeballs then put into, and it's like the back half of it. Think of it like a bowl almost. On the inside of it, it just has incandescent sprayed in there, and it's just to reflect more light, so they have better night vision.
Interesting.
But if you pop that out, it has fluorescence like a jellyfish or something.
Interesting. So, yeah, humans don't have that. The first time I read this, I was like, yeah, some stupid writer who has no idea about nature and reality made this story up. And then the own book like says the same thing.
I was listening to a book the other day.
Well, that's dumb because human eyes don't reflect in sunlight.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was listening to a book the other day, and someone said a buck elk. And I was like, walking, and I stumbled because it was so just like.
Look, my wife will even do that. So, I mean. Okay, so it says Rebecca's daughter-in-law, Olive Van Bibber Boone, quipped that the only. You laugh every time I read her name.
It's a great name, dude. Van Bibber Boone.
She married Nathan Boone, their youngest child. Boone's youngest son. It says that Rebecca's daughter-in-law, Olive. I'm not even going to read her name.
Here's the thing. If that was my name, I would have married a man named Smith, not Boone. Van Bibber Smith is better than Van Bibber Boone.
Van Bibber Boone, she quipped that the only shining was in the lover's eyes when they married. And if there was any shining of the eyes, it must have been there. Oh, that's nice, Olive. There are stories in the folklore of many cultures about the hunter who falls in love with his prey. The fire hunting story of Daniel and Rebecca may have been adapted from a similar Indian story. The sexual resonance of the story reaches across all cultures, and the renunciation of fire hunting at the end suggests a Victorian twist added by Flint. But Annette sees the fire hunting story as an example of the way Rebecca was marginalized in the accounts of Boone's life, especially in the 19th century. Okay, Annette.
How is she marginalized?
Because she's the prey that runs away instead of like the knife-wielding, dangerous rifle shooting.
Did she have a gun on her in the middle of the night?
In this story, she's just saying that, Daniel Boone's the hunter and she's just out there, and then the light's shining in her eyes and he almost kills her but doesn't, and she runs off, and it's this Victorian women. It's misogyny, the patriarchy, probably.
Probably.
But I'm also a little burnt on that whole subject. But she's just saying that she didn't like the story. Instead of it being like a romantic tale, to her it was just the patriarchy. Okay, moving on. Another tale, which the Boone family never denied, describes Daniel and Rebecca meeting at a cherry picking in the summer of 1756. So this is during the 7 Years' War. Just naming
it near the end.
Mm-hmm. Well,
last year or two.
No, it's kind of near the beginning. Just naming the occasion gives the story a nice erotic overtone. The couple sit in the grass of the cherry orchard. Rebecca, wearing a fine cambric apron, showing at once her practicality and love of finery. Cambric was hard to get on the frontier. Daniel, perhaps nervous, takes out his hunting knife and begins to flourish it around. The knife rips the fine apron in 3 places, but Rebecca Bryan does not protest or reproach him and seems to ignore the damage. Boone later explained to his descendants that he had meant to try her temper to see if she would get angry. Because she ignored the damage, Boone said he knew she was the woman he must marry. The tale shows Boone's love of a good story, and it also demonstrates how, in old age, he could turn what must have been an embarrassing at the time thing into what made him look wise even in his youth.
Or counter argument. That was what he was doing, but he was also trying to find a woman he could ditch for 6 months out of the year to go hunting. That would still be there when he got back. That's a patient woman you need.
It is quite possible that Rebecca saw what Daniel was about and only pretended not to care that her fine apron was ruined. These old tales. Another episode in the legend of the courtship has Daniel killing a deer and bringing it to the Bryan house to show Rebecca what a good provider he is. That sounds more like it. Of course, it is impossible not to get bloody, and carrying a deer with its throat cut and a bullet hole in its head or heart, Daniel dresses the carcass outside the Bryan house, getting even bloodier, while Rebecca cooks dinner inside. When the suitor is called in to eat, his hunting shirt is filthy, and he hadn't thought to bring a change of clothes. The Bryan girls from a more prosperous family than the Boones giggle and snicker at his condition. But Daniel will not be laughed at without retaliating. As he sits down, he lifts a cup and looks into it. You, like my hunting shirt, have missed many a good washing, he says. The quip was repeated often and always got a laugh, showing Daniel had evened the score. One Boone relative said it showed how proud women needed to be brought down a notch or two. So he comes in with a bloody shirt, and they're laughing at him. Oh, look how dirty he is. He's so gross. And he's like, yeah, like my shirt. Like you guys, my shirt hasn't had very many baths. That's like, I guess it's an insult.
I guess.
I think the difference in our time is showing right now as I read this. So it says Rebecca and Daniel were married along with other two couples in August of 1756 with Squire Boone as the justice of the peace. Many of the deeds Boone became famous for were done away from home among Indians or other hunters and soldiers, but it is impossible to imagine Daniel Boone's career without Rebecca in it. It is true that he loved the wilderness, the solitude of the long hunts, the adventure of the unknown, but he was also a man of intense loyalties, a family man who came from a big family and raised a big family. Without a woman as strong and resourceful as Rebecca, he could not have gone into the forest again and again for extended periods. Without a woman as steady and independent as Rebecca, he could not have even considered the many moves to strange places. Without her, his world would have collapsed under debt and uncertainty. The tall, buxom Rebecca inspired him and always drew him back from his great voyages of discovery and business. It is clear she also had what men most truly desired and needed in a wife. She could be relied on to keep the household together and raise the children, whether he was around or not. Later, when Boone was captured by the Shawnees and assumed dead, it was Rebecca who would lead her family back across the mountains to the safety of the Yadkin Valley. Rebecca Bryan Boone is one of the best examples in American history of the adage, behind every good man is a good woman. During the siege of Boonesboro, women dressed as men and carrying rifles paraded along the walls of the fort to make the attackers think there were many men inside the stockade. Indeed, some of the women in Kentucky were crack shots and expert hunters. In 1777, Esther Whitley of St. Asaph's Station, at a shooting match, would beat all the men, who kept firing at a target until it got dark, attempting to equal her marksmanship. I've been around quite a few women with bows and rifles. They're often the toughest to beat. Women haven't. They do seem to have a natural ability to aim a gun or a bow.
Mm-hmm. And Sandy was like that.
Mm-hmm.
My ex she's a really good shot. She never practices.
Yeah, women do have I think I heard Joel Turner describe it once, like what it is that's different between men and women that can help women in that capacity. But anyway, pretty interesting. So we're learning a little bit about his wife, the two of them. There's some interesting stories coming down the pipeline. One of these is this siege on the fort that they talk about, they alluded to, where these are some crazy stories where they get surrounded by hundreds and hundreds of Indians and they're doomed, but then they do all these trick moves to trick the Indians and to sneak out of the fort. And it's just like there needs to be a movie about that. Boonesboro and that whole storyline is wild. Also, I guess just learning about Rebecca and what it's like to be a frontier woman whose husband disappears for a year or two. And look, women have needs. And there's some stories where Perhaps not all of Daniel's children were Daniel's children exactly, but still in the family.
Oh, lovely. Lovely.
But there's a certain practicality, I think. The book, we'll get into it in more detail, but again, we have the tendency to judge based on our worldview in the setting we're in today. But if you're trying to survive out in the wilderness and you're carving that out, and
It's different, bro. I can call anyone and reach them. I call someone in Japan right now.
yeah.
It's not like
And you don't know if your husband is dead or not.
It's been months.
It's been a year and a half. You don't know. And also, children are you only have so many years of being able to bear children.
Mm-hmm.
And children are your future, your retirement,
It's your investment.
Your investment. That's how
don't have kids. There's no retirement homes.
That's how you.
There's no Social Security just yet.
Yeah, that's how families survived. Was kin. The kids are raised by the adults, and then later, when the adults are old, the kids are taking care of the old, and the cycle goes around and around. So having kids is important, and as a woman, having more kids and male kids as needed as well to sort of help with the farm and the load. And this is a very it's a world that requires labor to survive and to thrive. You can't do it without the work, without the physical work. They're not desk jobs. Mm-mm. They're not white collar accountants, Anyway, so the book carries on and it gets into the actual practical things that Daniel and Rebecca did when they first got married. One of the things that they do that's really interesting is they get into sugar.
Like planting sugar?
Harvesting, getting sugar.
Huh.
It's quite interesting. I don't know if you've kind of looked into that at all, but
like brown sugar or sugar cane?
I'll get through this last sugar section.
All right,
and it's just a couple pages, and then we'll wrap it up for today. But it says that Rebecca and Daniel first lived in a cabin on Squire Boone's property. And after Daniel's brother Israel died of consumption, they took in his sons Jesse and Jonathan and raised them as their own. So adopted 2 kids, right, from his brother. It says 9 months after their wedding, a son named James was born. Okay, so basically 9 months after. Anyway, their wedding night, in theory, produced their first child. Rebecca would have 8 more children over the next 25 years.
Dang.
And she would later adopt 6 children of a widowed brother.
On top of the 2 they already did, or collectively?
I don't know. I think on top of.
Dang.
So soon after their marriage, the young couple
16
moved to a new place in the Bryan settlement farther up the Yadkin on a creek called Sugar Tree, which ran into Dutchman's Creek near present-day Farmington.
Those people are walking in town with 2 basketball teams.
Farmington, North Carolina. The name of the creek suggests the presence of sugar maples. Maples were tapped on the frontier for syrup and sugar at a time when other sweetening was hard to come by. Bees were not common among the settlements then at that time, and sorghum cane had not yet been introduced to the region. The Boones must have begun their habit of annually collecting and boiling maple sap there, a custom they continued in all the places they lived until the end of Rebecca's life. Boiling maple syrup together seemed to be something that Daniel and Rebecca particularly enjoyed. In the periods he was at home and not roving, when he was away, Rebecca made syrup with their children. In the worst of times, later, when they had lost most of his land and was deeply in debt, they fell back on this forest occupation, making hundreds of gallons of syrup. On Hinkston Creek in Kentucky in 1797, almost 1800, while Boone was being sued for debts and land surveys, they would boil down enough sap to make more than 500 pounds of maple sugar to sell and use.
Dang.
It is easy to see why sugar making attracted Daniel. He did not much care for farming. Maple syrup was not something that had to be cultivated in the fields. In long days in the hot sun, plowing and hoeing and weeding, which sucked, maples grew in the forest like the game and could be tapped in the cool days of late winter as the sap rose from the deep root systems. Once the trees were tapped and the sap wept into buckets, it was carried to the boiling furnace. The main work was keeping the fire going. It takes 40 gallons of sap to boil down to 1 gallon of syrup.
Ew.
That is a lot of sap.
That's a lot of work. 40 to 1.
And 10 gallons of syrup to boil down to 8 pounds of sugar.
So so wouldn't you want more sugar then?
10 times 40 would be what you need to get 8 pounds of sugar.
Oh, jeez. Oh, my Lord.
It's a lot of sap. But
they got a lot of trees, and there's, like I said, there's 18 of them at this point?
It says, but the product was unsurpassed. Sweetening to use in cooking, sell, or give to friends. Maple sugar was the sweetening.
I ain't giving that to nobody. Are you kidding me? Do you know how much work that is? Oh, man, I have a hard enough time giving away a jar of jam I've made, let alone this took me 6 months to make this pound of sugar. You want to lick?
Yeah. It says maple sugar was the sweetening the Indians had before the whites had arrived. Once made, the syrup could be fermented as a kind of mead or distilled into wine or spirits. The boiling was done in late winter as snow was disappearing, just as arbutus was beginning to bloom. Sugaring came at the end of the trapping season as the fur was getting thinner, less valuable, before the deer hides were in their prime spring and summer condition. Sugaring was the first sign that spring was on the way.
Really?
A ritual to welcome the spring. Sugar making gave Daniel and Rebecca an opportunity to work together, a chance they rarely let slide by. The house Daniel built on Sugar Creek when he was about 22 years old was more substantial than a simple cabin. The logs were hewed flat and fit snugly together. A big fireplace and chimney of soapstone and wood provided heat for cooking and living and much of the light in the evenings. There was an outside kitchen for cooking in summer, and Daniel later added a puncheon floor fixed with wooden pegs. The house measured 18 by 24 feet, and according to a resident in the area at the time, was still standing 100 years later. That young man built his wife a house, which we all kind of do early on, and then we get tired, and next time we move, we roll on with something simpler. But yeah, he's young. He built a sweet house. It says settlers on the frontier were accustomed to living in small spaces. Brace yourself for this. There could be little privacy with children of all ages, babies crying, someone breaking wind or coughing. In the 18th and 19th centuries, people slept 2 and 3 to a bed when there was a bed. 4 or 5 children might sleep on the same cot or pallet. Because of lack of space and lack of beds, they slept packed together on ticks stuffed with leaves or straw or corn shucks. This is like a mattress that's made out of corn shucks or leaves. In cold weather, the several bodies in bed together helped them keep warm in a corner or loft far from the fireplace. There are many accounts of travelers stopping for the night at cabins or houses along their way. Common courtesy of the time and place required that visitors be invited to dinner and to stay the night. So if someone came by, you let them in. In a cabin where 10 people normally slept, the visitor would be invited to unroll his blanket near the fireplace and undress or half undress in the dark or the semi-dark. So your privacy was
limited.
The dark. A kind of privacy was created by everyone ignoring each other, pretending. And even if you woke in the night and heard the sounds of lovemaking nearby, you pretended not to notice.
La, 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 la.
You've seen Dances with Wolves, right? In the teepees? I mean, yeah. You pretended not to notice that the crowding in the cabins and little houses was no hindrance to lovemaking is proved by the number of children born in the frontier to families such as the Bryans and Boones. Judging by the birth rate, the hardships and crowding seem to have been a spur to fertility, not a restraint.
I don't know about that.
So, what do you think so far?
That just sounds like living in a big family.
Yeah, you and I aren't too far removed from that in our own lives. Like I remember at one point, I lived in a single room house, basically. You weren't born yet, and it was myself. Basically, it was myself and 5 sisters and mom and dad. And we all lived in like a one room studio apartment. So there was a bathroom that was private, but everything else was just one big space. And there was a little curtain that kind of divided where mom and dad's bed was. It was just a temporary place. We were there for maybe a year or so. It was a cute little studio, but it was tiny. And then we had these little trundle beds that would roll out during the day and go back at night. And we all just slept, all the beds, like 5 beds on the floor in the same big spacious room. We'd slide them away, go to school. I mean, I get it. We lived in that similar situation. I was in junior high school at the time, or freshman, I think, 8th grade freshman. It didn't bother me at all, really. I spent most of my time outside anyway.
Yeah.
We lived in the boonies.
Tracts of land.
We had lots of acreage. I mean, a compound.
Why would you want to be
family
inside
member.
at that point?
I didn't really use the bathroom inside either. Like
you had the option.
I had 5 sisters
and one
and
bathroom.
The mother. So, yeah.
I don't think I took a number 1 inside the house in 30 years.
Yeah, very true. So I get the frontier living, and they all lived in that same little space. Mm-hmm. When I was in camp, this is similar to when I was in camp with Dustin Rowe and the BC and Beyond crew, and Tanis and Doran were there, and Tanis just starts changing her clothes or going to the bathroom. And you just pretended like you didn't notice. You just turn and look the other way, continued your conversation, turned back. It was like it wasn't a thing. And sometimes we'll go hunting, and we'll be out there hanging out, and there'll be 6 of us, a bunch of dudes just kind of talking, and one of us just turns and takes a leak, and somebody from the city who's never hunted before is just like, what is, like, sometimes freaking out because
this dude's whipping out his thingy
right next to us, and it's like, what? That's weird. Like, because
he pointed the other direction. Chill.
I think, yeah, we're a little spoiled. So when these people were in the frontier like that, they were all in the same room. So when it came time, they just did it. And the kids just were like, oh, mom and dad are doing it again. And they just rolled over and pretended like nothing happened. So
life goes on. Life finds a way.
That's why when I hear people talk about how they were scandalized or scarred for life because they caught their parents once, it's like, dude, that's just, yeah, that's just like, I mean, nature. Like, it just happens. Like, okay, whatever. So, anyway, but that's the show for today. Hope you guys liked it. We learned about buxom.
This is a good episode.
And kind of, we're going to get in the next little section. We'll start getting out into some hunting and mountain adventures again as that's the next stage of the story. But I hope that people are gleaning from the book what I gleaned from it years ago when I read it, which is to understand better the world around me today, what it took to live in those times and get to where they are today. So that's it for today. I hope you like the show. If you do, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. Leave us a comment. Share it with your friends. We appreciate you. Thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you next time. All right, folks, I hope you're enjoying the Dueling Pistols podcast. If you like it, do us a favor and share it with a friend. Help us get this thing to grow a little bit bigger. Tell your dad, your mom, your brother, your sister, your buddy, your uncle.
Go to
your
contacts,
grandpa.
hit select all, send.
Just sell it. Just share it with a friend of yours, somebody, and help us spread the word about the show. Thanks for supporting us. We'll catch you on the next episode.